right, so hi everyone, welcome to our last talk of the day. And we are so fortunate to have Hema here to speak with us about the importance of open source contributions. And before she starts her presentation, I'll be giving a little introduction on her. So Hema attended San Jose State University from 2018 to 2020, where she got her master's degree in software engineering, so cloud and virtualization technologies as her specialization. She has a fondness towards design and implementation, and she also developed interest in cloud architecture while contributing to open source projects like OpenBSD, and she also implemented Terraform Provider for VRLI Cloud. And she's currently working as a cloud performance engineer at VMware. Among the things that she considers her job, to find out what can break and put together and to reach beyond the promise of SLAs to the customers throughout the world. And through her work, Hema also helps companies in terms of availability, scalability, and reliability. And some of the things that she likes to do in her free time are paint and interior designing. And so without further ado, I would like to pass this on to Hema. And so thank you, Hema.
Sorry. Thank you so much for the introduction. And for the opportunity. As she told, I've been working for some time as a cloud performance engineer. So I was involved in design, where I developed interest in the open source because as we look into the recent years, many of the large companies, they started to contribute to open source, and not just contributing, they encourage and also adopt this way to look into the future. So today I'm going to talk quickly about a few things. Sorry, why is the presentation not going forward? Yeah. So today I'm going to talk quickly about three things. One, how the companies are benefiting from the source projects and how did they modify the thinking towards it. And the next is how, as a software engineer, how we can enhance our careers, because one of the main advantage that as an individual we look at as our careers and what benefit it will help us to move on top of the line. So let me get started with the why companies encourage open source projects. So first thing would be insight and access. So what I mean by that is open source contribution gives companies direct access to those known projects inside out. These individuals know the direction of the project, where it's going on, the design, the bug fixes, so they can make a good decision based on the values that they see. So for example, the best project that I personally like is the Kubernetes, because I have been engaging in adopting into the cloud for almost like 3 years. And every time when there is a decision made, whenever there is a bug fix, it will always help us to see and plan the next releases with security. So that is really helpful when companies are dependent on adopting the open source projects. Next would be reducing of the technical debt. Organization can also reduce their technical debts when they contribute to a bug fix or improvement to an open source project, because companies that fix the bugs and push it onto the mainstream, like contributing a bug fix or improvement to the open source projects. So the new features and functionality that are added without contributing to the in the back. So what I mean is, instead of taking the code, making it as a branch and using it to yourself, rather than that, when they all try to merge it into the master, where you have one big pipeline, in that case, several other companies also benefit, and at the same time, there are billions of contributions happening. So the company can move forward instead of investing itself in the potential risks. So that is the really good opportunity, because we cannot always have like millions of developers fixing all the technical debts in the world, because it requires a lot of design thinking. And when it comes to design thinking, it does not come from the box, and it has to have a good experience. It involves soft skills, it involves looking at other solutions. It involves collaborating with other good engineers, and if possible, globally. So this is one of the good platform. And next one would be influence. Businesses can also influence the direction of a project when they contribute. Say that an organization wants a project to offer functionality that's important to the business. Having active contributors who can improve and implement these potential challenges will help guide the project in a favorable direction. So there are several things that businesses look into. And now let's go on to the quality of thought. uh, when planning and when the company is growing, they want to see how compatible and competitive with other companies as well. So in that case, they want to be abreast with the new technologies, new solutions that are out there. So with open source, the companies can look into the global projects that are out there and companies that are referring to. So this, since it gives an in and out access of the potential risks as well, so that will that will give a platform for different companies to collaborate each other and see what can they do in the future so that they can address these issues. So that is the main thing. And enhance platform quality. Let's say uh, the platforms, it can be different softwares. Let's say Android, it can be iOS. So when someone sees, I'm sorry, that's my phone, sorry. So yeah, when someone sees the platform quality, so let's say if it is an iOS, it's not easy to fix. Not everyone has an opportunity to work with Apple to fix the iOS. And it comes to Android, Microsoft, so it does not give the opportunity. Whereas when we know that some of the projects are being outsourced, then not only the people that are working for the companies knows why it occurred and what are the best solutions that are being given. And sometimes it also helps us to know beforehand itself, because some people who are really interested, they go through the entire code, they try to understand the design. And while doing that, we can see the potential risks upfront, even before someone has actually encountered them, or there is a huge data loss, or it can be a malware as well. Depending on the specializations, there are different kinds of projects available out there. So this way, companies get access to different kinds of mindsets and solutions, which they can evaluate. And sometimes it happens that companies, while doing interviews, they give the open source code and ask to find some bug in some components which they already tried to, which they already known. So those are the few advantages that the companies see. Next, let's see how it helps each of the software engineers. I was also, I was also in the same thing, like finding a job, trying to get my resume to the recruiters, like companies, and I was trying to figure out what companies do actually look for. So first thing first, that is coding skills. No matter where we are, no matter how we did get the job, but one thing that matters when we attend the job is coding skills. So forming a group of people, like 4 to 5 people doing a project, yes, that's a good start. But in that case, you are dependent on other person to complete the project and then give you so that you can move forward. So this is a good start. But when you join a company, they expect more. So they expect you to have some good knowledge on how to do a design in bigger level, see in a broader perspective. And also when you're wrong, you are supposed to correct yourself, and next time you should be able to give a design improvement. So this do come with experience, and this kind of experience can be easily provided if people get used to the open source, because in open source there are billions of people and the solution sometimes may not be unique. So that will help us to understand other perspective as well. And third is recognition. Once, uh, I mean, open source is not just about, hey, I write the code, I submit, but it is about the passion. Sometimes we don't get paid. What we see is there is a code, okay, we are trying to understand, and there are several challenges involved in that. Most of the times we don't understand the projects that we take. So this involves passion. We don't get paid. We don't get immediate job. But what this actually tells to the people who are hiring us is that we are willing to invest in our time to improve ourselves, although it doesn't pay us or benefit us. So that talks a lot. That will help us put you on top of the line over the others. That's what helped me as well when I started to contribute to open source. And next would be the job perspectives. One thing like it happens is that when I was contributing to open source of OpenBSD, I I didn't know much on what kind of people I'll be interacting with. And one time it happened that the solution that we did, it was approved, and we were approached by the CEO of the company itself, saying that this is really good. We might not publish it right away because there are several security things that checks that has to go through. So thank you for the contribution, and we would like to move forward with the project. So those kind of interactions we do get, and which is very valuable to see how our thinking, how our coding skills are being valued. And next time when we go and try to get a career in that domain, it will help us say that I already have knowledge on how things work. I know how the design can be improved, and this is how my perspective was, or this is how I did go wrong. So that was really good experience, and that is very valuable in the software industry. Next is the broad thinking. As I mentioned earlier, it's like in the open source community, we before even getting to a solution, understanding the designs, understanding the principles on which the project has been created is really important. And for this, most of the time we don't understand. Instead, we reach out to the people who have already been experienced in that. We reach out to them asking if they can explain or see the conversations, the intellectual conversations that they are doing while submitting the code. So that will help. That will create a perspective that we can work with large number of people in a broader perspective, and also respect others' values. So these are the skills that will make us go on top of the line along with other experienced people. And not every other projects will give us the same experience, but at least it's a good start. Numerous possibilities. Let's say this one is like, if we are planning to change a domain, like that's what I did when I moved into cloud from the backend development. I was so interested. My interest started from Kubernetes. I didn't know much about cloud, but then when I started to learn about it, I was so passionate about Kubernetes, but I didn't know much. So I started to go over it. It's an open source, the design. Open source is similar to every other product that needs to be maintained. It has to have a design document. It has to have a technical writing. It needs to go through security checks, and it needs maintainability, scalability. So Kubernetes is one of the open source project that is given by Google. So it is very well known, and it is one of the best projects that we can do for orchestration of the Dockers and maintaining the scalability of the pods. Currently, without Kubernetes, I don't know what big companies would do to manage their code, because it helps in several ways. It helps to tell you about scalability. It helps you to tell about when your code will go down so that the customer will be facing an issue. It's like forecasting the problem. So not just Kubernetes, there is Docker, there is Terraform. So there are several other projects that will benefit us and the companies as well, making sure that we gain the experience. Last but final thing, that's about the future on how the future is going to be for the open source, because currently contributing to just one, thinking that, hey, I like something is not just enough, because we need a career. So let me talk first about Microsoft. As we all know, it's a very well-known company. It's one of the FANG companies that people target to get a job into. So former Microsoft CEO like Steve Ballmer famously branded Linux as a cancer that it adds itself to an intellectual property and sends to everything it fits. So Linux was open sourced and people started to contribute, and Windows was not open sourced initially. It wasn't using open source projects thinking that it will be a violation to our intellectual property. But later, if we see, Microsoft has gradually been adopting open source in recent years, including open sourcing VS Code, PowerShell, and JavaScript engines. So Microsoft has certainly changed since the days of branding Linux as cancer. In fact, currently, looking at the statistics published in the 2020, it is one of the largest single contributors to the open source. And it did beat other companies like Facebook, Docker, Google, Apache, and many others. So yeah, companies are contributing, including some of the best companies that we look at as very secure. As I mentioned, Google, one of my favorite is Kubernetes, and it does have several other projects that are open source. Even VMware is doing an open source, that is VRLA Cloud, that one of which I worked on. I was providing Terraform to create alerts. So there are several other companies, and they do value the skills that the open source gives, because at some point they might be also using the same. So I would say it has a really good future, and people, it doesn't matter where we are or which experience, but the advantage would be the design and the thinking, which cannot be achieved by just reading books. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Any questions?